A German warship on a NATO mission. For 6 months, the crew lives at sea, works at sea, and if necessary, fights at sea. Around 240 men and women are deployed on the frigate. On board the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, they secure NATO's northeastern flank from the sea and train for emergencies, between maneuvers, exercises, and encounters with Russia. The port of Stockholm. The Mecklenburg-Vorpommern has already been deployed for several months.
Attention, crew, stand at attention. At ease. Eyes straight ahead. Report to the commanding officer to your right.
The mission, to show presence and to practice naval warfare alongside NATO partners. In the area where the Russian fleet is also demonstrating combat readiness. The German frigate plays a special role in the operation. As the flagship, the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern leads NATO's rapid reaction force in the Northeast Atlantic and in the North and Baltic Seas.
The frigate Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is the youngest frigate of the Brandenburg class and was commissioned 26 years ago. It was designed during the Cold War with a focus on anti-submarine operations, securing the then Allied supply routes against enemy submarines across the Atlantic.
The Mecklenburg-Vorpommern can operate worldwide. The ship is 139 meters long, almost 17 meters wide, and has a draft of around 6 meters. 236 officers, non-commissioned officers, and crew make up the warship's regular crew. The commander is responsible for the ship and crew.
Morning, Bridge.
Good morning.
I'm responsible for the nautical command of the ship. I'm responsible for the operational deployment of the ship and, in the broadest sense, for everything that happens on board, as chief officer of the frigate Mecklenburg-Vorpommern.
The crew prepares the ship to leave the port.
We are the first unit to leave. We'll check traffic when we head off. The weather is good today, but as per usual, safety before speed.
All hands to action stations.
To action stations!
The ship is readied for action. During the maneuver, the bridge crew is assisted by a Swedish harbor pilot. But the commander always has the last word on board.
Bridge bulwark.
Bridge.
I report all lines are clear.
The crew has a tight schedule to adhere to. Mission planning does not allow for any delays. The farewell to Stockholm takes place in perfect weather. Nevertheless, the dense traffic makes this part of the trip challenging. The pilot guides the frigate through the narrow channels of the Stockholm archipelago, made up of thousands of small rocky islands that extend into the Baltic Sea off the coast of Sweden's capital. The Mecklenburg-Vorpommern maneuvers out of the port between cruise ships and pleasure craft. There is often very little space on either side. Full concentration is required on the bridge. The area off Stockholm is a navigational challenge. The frigate's course leads right through the archipelago and out into the Baltic Sea.
This area is challenging. You have to concentrate on a lot of little things. For the rest of the crew, I'd say it's actually quite relaxed. The entire spectacle really only takes place on the bridge.
The trip takes several hours until the ship reaches the open sea. The Baltic Sea region has become a security hotspot and a target of Russia's hybrid warfare. It's also because of such threats that the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is patrolling these waters. The German frigate is an important part of NATO's Rapid Maritime Reaction Force.
The VJTF Maritime takes part in the major NATO maneuvers in the North Flank area, which take place here, and then also repeatedly with the group to be present in the Baltic Sea and practicing together with our allies there, and simply showing presence.
The Russian Navy is also regularly present. The sea area mirrors the geopolitical situation in the new Cold War between East and West.
We regularly encounter one another at sea, but all the encounters so far have been safe and professional. So where we're practicing, Russian units are also regularly active in the same waters. But that's pretty normal.
The Baltic Sea would be an important front line in the event of a confrontation with Russia. NATO is strengthening its maritime capabilities in the area.
After the invasion of Ukraine, which violated international law, we made it clear on behalf of NATO that this would not go without a response. And this alliance is part of that response with its immediate reaction capability, its high state of readiness, and its ability to assert itself. In the event that the alliance has to be defended, we make it clear that we will not accept any constraints on our security.
Geopolitically, the Baltic region is highly volatile. With the accession of Sweden and Finland, NATO dominates this part of the North Atlantic. Incidents are increasing, triggered by Moscow's hybrid warfare. The German Navy monitors the area with the P-3C Orion anti-submarine and maritime surveillance aircraft, the largest combat aircraft in the Bundeswehr's inventory. The aircraft is powered by 4 turboprop engines and is equipped with highly sensitive sensors and cameras. If necessary, the crew can fly just above the surface of the water. As a long-range maritime reconnaissance aircraft, the P-3C is the Navy's eye on the sea. The soldiers monitor wide-ranging areas from the air. All findings are transmitted directly to the NATO command.
We are showing others that we are here and patrolling the area. And we take a look at the ships that are operating here. We look at the commercial ships. Of course, we pay particular attention to Russian ships that are moored here off Kaliningrad or shuttle back and forth between Kaliningrad and St. Petersburg, for example. And we pay particular attention to the infrastructure: pipelines, internet cables, power cables, wind farms, oil rigs, and everything found in the maritime infrastructure. We take a look at this and see who's loitering, or what they might be doing, or want to do.
The flight leads from Nordholz in the north of Germany eastwards along the Polish coast, past the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad, and then northward up to Finland. Then the aircraft returns to base over the western Baltic Sea. The reconnaissance aircraft spots a Russian warship. The naval aviators want to find out more about the design, weaponry, and other equipment. Russian aircraft repeatedly approach the Orion during the missions, a game of cat and mouse over the Baltic Sea.
It happens quite regularly that we are intercepted by Russian interceptors, usually the Su-27, which then approach our wing and fly alongside us for 5 or 10 minutes and then take off again. This is a normal procedure, which we also carry out in Germany. If an unidentified aircraft or maybe an enemy aircraft approaches our airspace, interceptors take off, identify the aircraft, and certainly take reconnaissance photos of it, and then turn away again after a certain time.
The maritime reconnaissance aircraft is used exclusively in international airspace. With its equipment, though, the aircraft can also take a detailed look at Russian ports and collect important information. The course of the P-3C leads to the Russian naval port of Baltisk, a base of the Baltic Fleet. This leads to an unusual encounter. A Russian submarine is cruising through the Baltic Sea. A fighter submarine with conventional propulsion, NATO code Kilo class.
We're all aware of the seriousness of the situation, especially as soldiers. We're very close to it. I can't really say that the mission has changed, because reconnaissance in the Baltic Sea has always been the core business of the Navy and naval aviators. But of course the seriousness is even greater when you know what the situation looks like a little further south or southeast of us.
The mission of the airborne reconnaissance aircraft is to monitor and secure the sensitive Baltic Sea region. They therefore play a central role in NATO's defense strategy. The data they collect flows into an operational picture that is subject to constant change. Surveillance is also part of the mission of the frigate Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. In the event of a crisis, it's also responsible for surface naval warfare, and the crew is drilled for this every day. They practice with the heavy machine gun, caliber 12.7 millimeters. 4 of these are permanently installed on board. They are used mainly for close-range defense against smaller units approaching the ship.
When you shoot, and the gun is not properly oiled, and you're shooting a lot, then it will eventually get hot in there. And this can lead to malfunction. In fact, that's the most common malfunction that occurs with the MG5. If that happens, for God's sake, don't open the covers, because something might be stuck in the front. The bolt might not be locked properly. You open the lid, the bolt snaps forward, and the shot goes off immediately.
Anyone operating the heavy machine gun must be absolutely confident in handling the weapon. Every second counts in an attack, and every operator error can cost lives. Frigates are the Bundeswehr's most expensive weapon systems. The heavily armed warship is equipped for a variety of deployment scenarios. Still, the main task of the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is to hunt submarines. The frigate has an anti-aircraft missile launch system installed in front of the bridge. Brandenburg-class ships can fire guided missiles from 16 launcher cells at air targets and engage them at a distance of up to 50 kilometers. Highly sensitive radar systems localize and identify any airborne objects that approach the ship. The system is supplemented by a short-range air defense system, covering a range of 10 kilometers. With 1 launcher at the bow and 1 at the stern, the frigate can engage aircraft, approaching missiles, cruise missiles, and drones. An infrared seeker guides the surface-to-air missiles to the target.
Missile 051. And it's off. Explosion.
The frigate combats enemy surface units with anti-ship Harpoon missiles.
3, 2, 1, fire!
The Harpoon has a range of up to 220 kilometers and is a standard weapons system on NATO warships. The ship's sensors feed the missile with target data. When the missile approaches its target, the onboard radar takes over in the final stage of flight. The warhead consists of 220 kilograms of high explosives. The ship's assets also include 2 remote-controlled machine guns with a caliber of 27 millimeters. The 2 so-called light naval guns fire 1,700 rounds per minute. Like the machine guns, they are used to defend against smaller surface units, such as speedboats. Finally, the frigate's main gun is located on the forecastle, a 76mm cannon made by the Italian manufacturer Otto Millara. This is the standard deck gun of the German Navy and is deployed in different variants. With up to 85 rounds per minute, it's used to engage air targets as well as sea and land targets. Loading, aiming, and live fire exercises are practiced regularly aboard the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. The gun is normally operated by a turret operator and 2 loaders. The soldiers inside the turret gun are in constant contact with the operations center.
Chamber 3, loaded.
The ammunition chamber is located directly next to the gun. In battle, the soldiers can continuously reload the cannon's magazine from here.
Loaded. Hydraulics.
Prepare, and we're starting. Romeo, Papa, 160, distance 2000. One firing burst, 3 fire.
1 firing burst. Fire 3.
The projectiles reach a speed of almost 1,000 kilometers per hour when they exit the water-cooled gun barrel. Change of watch. After being briefed on the situation, the new watch takes over the bridge. The bridge team, headed by an officer, is responsible for navigational safety. And the bridge provides some of the ship's most important sensors, the lookouts for visual reconnaissance within sight of the ship.
Bridge. Order. Boats clear to pass.
The bridge has an overview of all processes on board and in the immediate vicinity.
We indicate visually that we are taking a break from flight operations and a new base course of 230 has been announced.
A warship never sleeps. The bridge is manned around the clock.
We always have 3 watches manning the bridge, essentially 24 hours a day in shifts. Usually from 8 to 12, 12 to 1800, 18 to midnight, midnight to 4, 4 to 8, and then again 8 to 1200.
A 3-watch system is common on warships. The system rotates so that the crew does not always have to keep the same watch. The bridge is also where all the relevant navigation data are received.
Here are our 2 radars and the electronic nautical chart. They provide us with a situational overview, also visually. We can also see exactly where we are headed on the radar, and on the electronic nautical chart, it's pretty much like a navigation system, and it helps us to keep our close ranges clear and prevent collisions.
Sailing as part of a fleet requires the utmost attention and concentration. From the commander to the crew member steering the Colossus.
It's our helmsman who actually steers the ship. You don't need a driver's license to do that. You can sail just like that. Several tons of steel through the water.
A wide variety of tasks come together on the bridge. One thing counts above all: working smoothly as a team.
Both engines 13 knots.
Both engines 30 knots.
The real brain of the frigate is the operations room, OPZ for short. Cameras are tabooed during the NATO deployment of the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, but the setup is similar to these images from the frigate Hessen. The situations underwater, above water, and in the air are continuously monitored from here. The Navy calls it three-dimensional naval warfare.
As long as he doesn't change height, he poses no threat.
In combat, the ship is commanded directly from the OPZ, with all other areas, including the bridge, operating under its authority. This is where targets are identified and engagement strategies are planned and executed. The heart of the frigate is the engine room, a combined propulsion system consisting of 2 diesel engines and 2 gas turbines provides the enormous amount of energy that the warship needs.
With 3 megawatts, it means that we could power a city like Wilhelmshaven, excluding the big companies and the really big energy consumers. So assuming we could give our power load to the city, we could supply the street lighting and households with it.
The highly complex systems require constant maintenance. All systems are monitored from the machine control station, around the clock. If there's a problem, an alarm is triggered. The biggest enemy on board is fire in the ship. A fire can lead to disaster.
With all our power units on board encapsulated, they also have their own CO2 fire extinguishing system. So if a fire breaks out inside this capsule, whether in the gas turbines or diesel engines, it triggers a chain reaction, and CO2 is pumped into the capsule through these cylinders to extinguish the fire.
Several times a day, the crew goes on a so-called round, a watch tour during which all important systems are checked. Important values are logged, and the results are reported to the control center. Maintenance on the high seas has its own special features. The ship is in constant motion, and the waves can also distort the measurements.
Especially at sea, it makes sense to take bearings more often. Otherwise, the measurements will be distorted. But this engine has enough oil. I'll stake my reputation on that. We've done our seaworthiness check, and everything's good. The ready-to-start criteria are met, so there's nothing standing in the way of a start. The control station knows. And it's about to get loud.
Aus der Maschine!
The diesel engines also generate the electricity for the warship. Little has changed here since it was commissioned in 1996. The system is considered to be very reliable. Besides the diesel engines, the 2 propellers are also powered by 2 gas turbines. They provide the necessary extra power. The turbines do not run when cruising, but are always ready for use.
In each round, we check that the gas turbine has no leaks, climb in briefly, and inspect all the components. Every line we have here. And if everything looks like it does right now, no oil or anything else visible, then everything is good. Then we have our fuel gauges here. They allow us to see how many liters the gas turbine consumes. If we run the turbines at full load, we can quickly reach about 100 liters of diesel in just 45 seconds.
The gas turbines offer a major advantage. They work extremely efficiently, especially under full load. This means the frigate can also travel longer distances, traveling full speed ahead.
We have everything under control here. The systems are running as they should with no issues. And even if problems were to arise, we are always prepared to handle them.
Meanwhile, another department is keeping an eye on the crew's power system. Fuel for a hungry crew. The galley takes care of that. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Everything is freshly prepared below deck.
Full and satisfied, yes. But with so many people, you can't please everyone. Tastes are different and there's always a middle ground. At least a reasonable balance. So I try to keep it as varied as possible.
The German armed forces have precise guidelines on how varied the food should be. Cooking for more than 200 crew members every day, on a warship and at sea, that can be a challenge. No matter what the situation, the food has to be served. You can't fight on an empty stomach.
If you've got waves 8 to 10 meters high, then that's something else. Then you're standing in the kitchen and, well, it's just a different experience when everything is flying around.
Another problem, supplies are not available every day. Good planning is a basic requirement here.
The problem is that maybe we don't have enough cheese, and you can't get cheese that we need in every harbor, because you can't order a pile of it. That's the problem. That's how it goes. Nope, nope, nope. You have to have the goods. You have to look at what's available and live based on the situation at hand.
Tons of food are stored deep in the belly of the ship. Fresh produce and frozen goods. Food holds the ship together. A sailor's saying. Cake, the highlight of the week at sea. Always on Thursdays, the sailor's Sunday.
Today we have a mole cake. It's a chocolate base, then the bananas, then cream, and on top, crumbled. It's topped again with the chocolate base, the finishing touch.
Cakes, rolls, or bread, the ship's own pastry operation bakes fresh every day.
Bread is baked every night, and rolls are baked every morning for every breakfast. We make them here in the bakery. Hard work is more fun on board than on land.
Whether it's morning, noon, evening, or a small snack at night, the galley feeds the crew of more than 200 at all times of the day, and no matter how rough the sea is outside. If the food tastes good, morale is better. That's the motto. 6 months together at sea, camaraderie and morale have to be maintained. Another integral part of the ship's daily routine, the ship's cleaning. It's cleaned and scrubbed everywhere. In the end, the first watch officer checks whether the work has been done thoroughly. Meanwhile, on deck, the frigate's so-called long arm is getting ready. The warship's air component. 2 hangars for the onboard helicopters are located at the stern. The 2 helicopters are enormously important to the frigate's operations. They not only extend the range and tactical flexibility, they also boost the ship's reaction speed.
The biggest advantage of having a helicopter on board is that you have an extension of the ship. That means you can cover a much larger area where you can demonstrate presence. This presence can take the form of carrying out reconnaissance work, or simply looking to see what kind of a ship is sailing there now, for example. If there was a conspicuous ship sailing under a Russian flag, we could send a helicopter there immediately for a closer look. But if we were to move on to the more serious case, we would then have another spectrum to reconnoiter subs, and even hunt them down with torpedoes, or ultimately sink them.
A total of 18 naval aviators are on duty at all times for maintenance, flight operations, and flight planning. 3 people fly the aircraft: the pilot, the co-pilot, and the loadmaster, who also operates the sonar.
We've brought helicopter number 2 on board the frigate for missions, so we're not permanently on board, and we can cover a lot of ground. First, we're there to detect and engage submarines. Second, we're also responsible for naval surface warfare, primarily for situational awareness. For this purpose, each helicopter has a radar that can cover 100 nautical miles. Second, we also transport personnel and material. In the cabin for personnel, and the material, if it fits in the helicopter, it's transported in the helicopter or else with load hooks in a net or on a long cable in a box.
Takeoff and landing are not harmless maneuvers for the crew. The speed of the ship, the direction and strength of the wind, and the movements of the frigate on the sea are parameters that have to be factored in. Otherwise, there is a risk that the helicopter will collide with the ship. Naval pilots undergo complex training. Pilots must pass a number of tests before they're allowed to land on board a ship. In case of doubt, the crew must be able to take off and land safely in very rough seas.
We land and take off from a moving platform. If we imagine the whole thing at night and with a moving ship that's pitching, you have to wait a very long time for the right moment to set it down.
Sea Lynx aircraft have been in service with the Navy for more than 40 years. Now, the type affectionately known as the Flying Cat of Prey is being replaced. The Sea Lion, the naval version of the NH-90 transport helicopter, will take over the tasks of the Sea Lynx. This ultra-modern helicopter will be deployed on all German frigates in the future, as a reconnaissance helicopter, but also as a transport and liaison helicopter. It can also be used to fly special forces to their missions. The Sea Lion can also be armed with 2 heavy-mounted machine guns. To date, the NH-90 has mainly been used for search and rescue missions. In the future, the Sea Lion will become a general-purpose tool for the Navy. The technology aboard the helicopter is much more extensive than its predecessor. There are more sensors to control the aircraft and for reconnaissance and surveillance. This provides the crew with important information from the systems aboard the NH-90. The NH-90 Sea Lion is far superior to its predecessor, thanks to its wide range of possible uses. It's simply the more modern aircraft. Naval aviators see this as a new era. Helicopter crews on board the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern are on constant alert. This is the only way the ship can react quickly to unusual situations. A radio message takes the NATO unit out of its daily routine. An emergency call from the ferry Stena Spirit reaches the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. The ferry was on its way from Poland to Sweden when a mother and her 7-year-old son went overboard. The NATO unit interrupts all its exercise maneuvers and heads for the scene of the accident. Mother and son are in mortal danger in the cold Baltic Sea.
Of course, there's an emotional factor when you know that people are in the water and need help. But on the other hand, you react automatically and in accordance with the procedures we have on board. They provide a high degree of safety. The group switched from exercise mode to rescue mode within a few minutes and was therefore able to provide support very quickly. So we were able to offer our assistance to the Swedish Rescue Center immediately.
Where on the ship did the person fall overboard?
Every minute counts.
Do we have any estimation of how high the fall was? How many meters? About 20.
Many of them are fathers themselves and have children that age. That makes the pulse race twice as fast. We're not primarily trained for search and rescue operations. That's what our comrades from the Seeking Squadron do. Even if it's not the nicest part of the job, it's unfortunately part of it. And we always give 200% to get the best results.
We were then notified that both people had been picked up by the ferry's lifeboats. We then took them on board one of our helicopters, one person, and the second was taken immediately to hospital in Karlskrona by a Swedish helicopter. Both were in very critical condition when they were transported. They were handed over to the specialist staff at the hospital for further care.
The next day brings the sad certainty. Despite the rescue, mother and son did not survive. The crew of the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is hit hard by the disaster. They had tried everything. There is a dedicated ship's hospital for medical emergencies on board. The 3-person team also looks after the health of the crew.
In the day-to-day setting, we're basically the ship's general practitioners. But on the other hand, we're also a bit of a caregiver for everyone. And I think the big advantage we have over the civilian world is that we naturally know our patients much better, because we live with everyone under one roof, so to speak.
In addition to routine exams and illnesses, the medical staff on board also have to be prepared for emergencies and disasters. The ship's hospital is equipped with everything imaginable for this purpose.
An optimized team could be brought on board here, for example, a surgeon, an anaesthetist. This already happened during the last mission, but this time they're only on standby. But the equipment is all here. Everything we'd need in terms of surgical and anesthesiological equipment on standby to perform an emergency operation.
All important medicines are available in the ship's pharmacy. In addition to the ship's doctor, the frigate also has its own dentist on board.
We are classified as dentists, especially for foreign deployments. You can actually see that here. I'm actually an Army soldier, not originally a sailor, and I was brought on board here especially for this deployment to serve as a dentist, to provide support. And as a German group, at the moment, we're the only ones with a dentist aboard. So that means I'm not just the dentist here for the crew, but also the dentist for the entire fleet, including the foreign ships. 4-7 fissures are sealed, 4-8 is missing. Don't be alarmed, I'm just going to tap on the teeth to check where it hurts. Essentially, we can do everything here on board that a normal dentist can do on land. The only difference is that we don't have a real X-ray machine here. X-ray diagnostics are usually performed in port. We send patients to a civilian dentist in port for x-rays, and as soon as the images are available, everything is done here. But basically, we can cover almost everything dental here. It's great for the crew, of course, because we also manage to conduct all the annual checkups that are mandatory in the Navy.
Auch jedes Mal durchzuführen.
All right, have a good day.
Same to you.
If anything comes up, feel free to stop by. You can arrange an appointment at the front desk for the dental cleaning. Take care.
Being independent of ports for a long time is essential for a warship. The frigate is able to take on supplies on the open sea. This also includes refueling. The deckmaster and his team are preparing for a special maneuver.
Reporting to the bridge, the sea railing has been removed.
The frigate heads for a French task force supply ship.
Once the ships have positioned themselves, we make our first connection across. So we'll use the line thrower to get their lines over to us.
Bridge to deck, you have clearance.
We have clearance, we're in position. You can go ahead. We want to aim between the 4 and the 6 towards the crane. Go ahead. 100%, now secure it.
Refueling is prepared with several auxiliary lines. Now, everyone needs to fully concentrate. Course and speed have to be maintained on the bridge, and on deck, the heavy tank nozzle is pulled over. The lines can also be used to bring food on board, and also, very important, to exchange mail.
Emotionally, it's one of the most beautiful maneuvers now as a multi-ship pass, so 2 units, with one currently supplying. You constantly have eye contact with the others because they're doing exactly the same thing as us on another ship, only they're feeding us and we want something from them. But in terms of personnel, it's exactly the same. That's why the others all have helmets on, because their helmet has a meaning too. Me as the maneuver leader, the security officer with a white helmet, blue helmets, those are the work crew. Or you have the other personnel in grey helmets, all our technicians, the stokers, who are taking delivery of the fuel right now.
Ja, dann Befehl 3-Stufen-Leine zurückgeben.
Within a few minutes, the German warship takes on around 80,000 liters of fuel in the middle of the Baltic Sea.
Second fuel sample taken, free of contaminants.
We always want to be full so that we have a high level of operational readiness. That way we're prepared if something happens, hopefully not, wherever we have to go, depending on the mission. We need to advance 5 meters.
The distance is precisely maintained with an auxiliary line. Otherwise, the tank nozzle could tear off. Then everything is sent back across. The refueling was successful. Now, the NATO mission in the Baltic Sea can continue for the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. The next maneuver already awaits the bosun and his team. Soldiers are repeatedly exchanged between the ships in the convoy. The crew of the speedboat is getting ready.
It's really very safe. You can't fall out. The safety precautions are all there. The suits are on. The helmets are on, more have been put on. Now the boat is guided down. The boat just has to position itself and away it goes, just as you can see now, at full speed. The boat is launched.
Over rough seas, the speedboat crew is now heading across to the French ship.
First they dock and hand over the French, and then the Germans get back in, come back here, and then the crossboat is completed.
The German warship is already awaiting the return of the speedboat. The small boat is lifted up while in motion.
The boat is now in the waiting position. There in front, the ship is positioning itself at the moment and gives the boat the order so we can take it on board.
The boat is lifted out of the water with the crane, thanks to a powerful winch. "6 months at sea, in the tightest of spaces, including romanticized moments of the life of a seafarer." Team spirit and camaraderie, that's what it's all about on every mission at sea. What makes NATO special? Teamwork with allied countries.
We definitely benefit from each other. The Navy has always been very internationally oriented. We also do a lot of our operational training together.
Not only the camaraderie within their own crew, but also the friendship with allied soldiers often lasts a lifetime.
We perform naval exercises together from morning to night. We speak a common language. It's nice for the crews to get together, even in ports for work meetings. And the international flair is very noticeable within the group.
And so, whenever a ship leaves the group, it's traditionally given a proper send-off. Like the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, this Polish warship was deployed for several months as part of the NATO Rapid Reaction Force. Joint maneuvers between Allied navies used to be rather rare, but have now become recurring operations.
The priorities have changed. The pace is significantly different. Now, from morning to night, our core skills are called on again and again.
The world has changed. It has grown less secure. The renewed conflict between East and West has highlighted the need for a defensive navy within the NATO alliance. The Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is already awaiting new orders and its next mission. Somewhere on the seas of the world, but certainly in a hot spot.